it's a great way to have a metric, right? If you don't know what the scoreboard is in the game, you don't know who's winning, right? And you don't know what's making the difference. So if you look at, sports, all the stats they have for all the players, they know definitively, how well this person's potentially going to do, right? Same thing when you have a tracker. You can start understanding, hey, am I moving around as much as I thought? Hi, welcome to another episode of the Immuno Labs Podcast. My name is Boone, and just take one moment, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, because today we're going to be diving into various things that are going on in biohacking, what stuff makes sense, what stuff may not really be worth the money, and you want to make sure to subscribe so you can catch all the other videos. Also, put a comment below. Maybe there's a biohacking thing that you do that I didn't cover that you want to make sure everyone is aware of, and you can talk about the benefits that you get from it. But please subscribe, comment, like the video. It helps more people see it. We get more people educated. This is how we make a change in our healthcare. So let me get into it. So today we're going to be talking about what works, what doesn't work. Fortunately, I've had a lot of experience with a lot of these different, biohacking modalities. So I'll not only share what I know to be true, along with, the benefits and the downsides, but then also like how or other ways you can potentially get this achieved. And, does it really make sense for everyone? So the first two that we're starting out with is the first two things I even begin my day and end my day with. So the first thing, which I'm sure so many people have heard about, is cold exposure. So this can be your ice baths, your cold plunge, even taking a cold shower. Like I know when I visit my in-laws up in Toronto, I don't need a cold plunge, right? I just put on the cold water. It is freezing up there, even during the summer. So this is one of those things where like you don't have to really overcomplicate it, right? If you have the means, you have the space, you have the ability, of course, get like a cold plunge, a proper like ice bath that's always producing this super cold water, because the benefits that you're going to feel is really a mood boost, right? So when you get into the cold plunge, initially what your brain is saying is get out, you're going to die. But as long as you take your time, stay in there for about 3 to 5 minutes, when you get out, you're going to have a nice even release of dopamine throughout the day. So that's why I begin my day with a cold plunge, because I feel that effect throughout the rest of the day. Also, this is probably less of a scientifically measured thing, but when I get in it, I kind of begin my day by doing something I don't want to do. So I'm kind of building up that muscle in my, I don't know if it's really brain, but in my persona of I do hard things. So I do something I don't want to do. I push through it. So it's kind of like everything else, throughout the day just doesn't necessarily seem as hard. I know that seems silly, especially when we're talking about just getting into cold water, but it's once again just one thing that I can easily do to build up that resilience. So some of the downsides, it is a shock for some people if you do have heart issues. Like for example, there's a friend of mine, or actually someone really close to me, they had a heart surgery, and I didn't realize that this would potentially be a problem for them. So I was like, yeah, it's just cold water, what's the worst that can happen? Well, it did elevate their blood pressure more, it did increase their pulse a bit more. Everything was fine, but after the fact, when they got out and they're like, I don't really feel as good, I was like, that's weird. Like usually cold plunge feels amazing. And then as we look back at like their kind of medical history and then what they should or shouldn't do, this was on one of those areas. It's like, yeah, for that person, for that very unique individual that had open heart surgery, they should probably stay away from this. Other, possible downsides is the main way we've heard about, ice baths first is with athletes, right? So they do some, strenuous athletic endeavor, and then they get into the cold plunge to kind of help with the inflammation, right? What they have found through research is that if you are doing strength training or trying to build muscle, and then right after that session, you go into, an ice bath or cold plunge, cold water up to your neck, and you stay in there, you can actually reduce how much muscle building you'll be able to do. So that's kind of the downside, but really all you need to do is just change the timing, right? So instead of doing it after an exercise, it's actually much better to do it before your exercise. So that's a downside, but it's also just kind of adjust when you do it, right? As far as the science for it, there's been strong support for mood and mental health, and there's mixed evidence on recovery and fat loss. I would not really be concerned or believe anything regarding the fat loss. I mean, you're in there for like 3 to 5 minutes. Of course, your body's trying to heat back up. You're going to be burning some more calories. I would not put this as like the primary thing that you're going to get out of this, right? I would say, mental fortitude and improvement in mood, that's the best. It also feels kind of nice. So once again, if you are regularly working out and you're doing this before your workout, it feels quite refreshing to kind of have your body just, feel good and feel ready to then go into the workout. I know that sounds odd because you're like, well, I'm so cold. Won't I hurt myself? I mean, you'll be cold, but I doubt you're going from, cold plunge into the heaviest squat you've ever done. If you're thinking of doing that, I would not recommend that. I'd probably do the cold plunge. It'll probably take you, 10, 15 minutes to get to the gym. You'll start warming up by then, continue your warm up, get into your workout. I've been doing this for, probably a couple of years now. I've never once injured myself, so I don't think it's going to be a huge issue. So cold plunge, do I recommend it? Do I not recommend it? Absolutely, double thumbs up. I recommend it. Once again, you can do the thing where you go to some studio and pay to be able to go there, use their cold plunge. I would probably say that's going to be the most expensive. I mean, it's the cheapest to go in and do it one time, but if you regularly want to do it, that's going to probably be the most expensive, over time. The least expensive is just do a cold shower, right? If you live here in South Florida, cold shower is probably not really going to cut it. So you could, get some ice, put it in your bathtub. If you find that you're doing that a lot and, you don't want to do the headache of it, then, the last option, which truly is the best if you want to make a routine and habit out of this, is you just, invest the money, buy, a cold plunge, or you could even just buy a water chiller, put it into your bathtub, especially if a bathtub that is in some spare bathroom or whatnot they don't really use. That's going to be maybe $1,000, $2,000 to have something like that. And then if you want like a full, cold plunge unit, I don't know, that's going to range anywhere from probably $4,000 to, way beyond, depending, what kind of a unit you want. So anyways, that's something you look into, but definitely works. The next one, which I said, these two are the ones I begin my day and end my day with, right? So the one I end my day with is heat exposure. So that's going to be, sauna, hot baths, hot tub, any type of like contrast therapy. There's a lot of benefits to these. They can mimic exercise. So when you get into a sauna, if you have a heart rate monitor, you'll find initially you get in, nothing's really going on, right? But if you stay in there for 20 minutes, probably around, I don't know, maybe like the 10-minute mark or so, you'll see that your heart rate actually goes significantly up. So if your resting heart rate is somewhere around, 60 beats per minute or so, you'll find out that when you're in the sauna, you may be getting up to like 120, 140 beats per minute. So it's wild because you're sitting doing nothing, but your heart rate's going about as high as if you were, running on a Stairmaster, right? So that's, a nice benefit. Once again, I would not put this as, the best fat loss method, but just once again, it's building up that cardiovascular health, which is, very good. It can then also help lower blood pressure, and it improves circulation because you're getting hot, right? You're getting flush. So your blood's going, all over and around your body, versus the cold plunge, you're pulling blood and, and the fluids away from your extremities. And then as you get out, you're kind of flushing it back. If you have the means to have a cold plunge and some kind of a sauna or like hot tub, they can do contrast therapy where you go from cold water for a couple minutes to then hot water for a couple minutes, keep going back and forth. And essentially you're kind of taking your body and like a big sponge, like wringing it in and out. So that can be really effective for your health. Let's see, I was looking back at my notes. Other things that I've also noticed as a benefit is muscle relaxation and recovery as well for the hot sauna. So what I usually do is, cold plunge, workout, go about my day. At the end of the day, that's when I do the sauna to kind of, help relax me into sleep. Also, by getting my body temperature higher before bedtime, then my body starts going, okay, we need to cool down, cool down, cool down. And then as I get into bed, my body continues to cool itself. I'm ready to sleep. I sleep great. So yeah, as far as the downsides, I mean, some of these are once again obvious, but I'm just going to mention them. Of course, if you're sweating a ton, you could be dehydrated, right? So simple solution, bring a water bottle with you into the sauna. Ideally a glass bottle, because if you have metal ones, depending on how hot your sauna is and where you're kind of putting that bottle is going to get really hot too. So just be aware of that. And then other, downsides is, once again, potentially, heart conditions, because since we are increasing your heart rate, that can maybe be an issue for some people. So, these are things that, can easily be monitored, adjusted, and for the majority of people, this is not going to be a problem. There are so many studies that prove the benefits of sauna and heat exposure over long, long periods of time, because this has been a tradition in Finland and some of the more Northern European countries. So this is not some pseudoscience or, just some, quick thing that came up into popularity and no one really knows if it does anything. This definitely has great benefits and, it's fairly easy to do, but you have to kind of make the investment in, getting a sauna. So that can range in different prices, but yes, if you have the means, absolutely double thumbs up, sauna, definitely works. Heat exposure is fantastic. If nothing else, you can do selective heat exposure to areas where you have an injury, and that can help a lot with the circulation and recovery. So next we have intermittent fasting and time-restricted eating. So this one isn't a tool, this is just a habit, right? This would be something that you would do. Maybe you want to do it for a certain amount of time, or maybe this becomes just your life of just how you operate with your eating habits. So what intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating means is that instead of waking up and from your time you wake up to the time you go to bed, you see that as like, oh, this entire time I can, eat. Instead you go, okay, I'm going to go to bed at 10 p.m. Then I'm not going to eat for the next 16 hours, right? So then you won't eat again until maybe sometime later in the afternoon, right? So that'll be your first meal. So instead of waking up, having some kind of breakfast, you'll probably have tea, black coffee, something with 0 calories, and then pass beyond breakfast, and then around lunch you'll have your first meal. Maybe you'll have a snack, then you'll have dinner. So there's 2 good things about this. One is it's a really easy way to reduce your caloric intake. And second, by reducing how much you're eating and also the time window around what you're eating, you can start pushing your body more into autophagy, which is where your body kind of eats itself and also kind of cleans up some stuff. So since it's such a short window, you're not really going to be, eating away your muscle or doing a, long-term issue, in your health. But as always, talk with your physician to make sure this is right, because if you're an individual that's, remarkably, slender and low body fat, this may not really be the thing for you. But if you're someone that's looking to, make some adjustments, or you're looking for, something to do short-term and kind of, jumpstart your health, or maybe there's something you do, like a 3-day fast or something, once a month to just, keep on top of your health and allow your body to kind of do more autophagy, then great, something you can do. But as always, check with your doctor, because anytime you're doing something where you're like not eating as you normally would, this can raise all kinds of issues. It can raise blood sugar issues. It can create issues in fatigue, focus, all kinds of stuff. So especially if you're an athlete exercising a lot, you're under fueling, so you may not be building as much muscle or recovering as easily. So there's a lot of things that could go wrong with this. I think once again, just using common sense, set a certain eating window, do it for a week, see how you feel. I think you'll probably be fine. Of course, if you have any specific medical condition, talk with your physician first about your interest in doing intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating. They'll be able to give you some more insights on what you can do. But of course, in any caloric restriction, there's very strong evidence for weight and metabolic health, so it can definitely make some great improvements there. And there is great longevity evidence, but it's mostly from animal studies. So the human data is emerging, but we don't have as hard science on that, but there's a lot of great insights coming from it. So with intermittent fasting, I also give that a thumbs up. That is something that definitively works depending on what your goal is. And there is a lot of research around caloric restriction and longevity and how that can help you with your health. So, it's not the worst thing to, maybe eat a little bit less, depending of course on, what your diet normally is, what your body type's like, all those things. So next we have the ketogenic and low carb diets. I'm not as big of a fan of this, right? I'm not gonna make you wait till the end for this one, and I'll tell you in a moment why. So there are some great benefits, right? It can help you with your fat loss and blood sugar control. It can improve your energy stability, because you're not like riding these crazy, blood sugars of like having Fruit Loops for breakfast and spiking through the roof and then dropping, and then you're grabbing some Big Mac and Super Size Me soda, whatever it is, and you're just kind of going through this insanity. Instead, by being on the ketogenic diet, you're focusing more on like the proteins and like proper fats. So you're already kind of eating better, and you're also pushing your body to use fat as its energy source instead of sugar as its energy source. And fat is kind of like a little bit longer burning than say sugar, which just kind of can spike up and down. Like, fat and proteins are going to be kind of like the logs on the fire, and the sugars, carbs, and alcohol, stuff like that, that's like throwing the kerosene on the fire. It's kind of lights up and then goes down there. Throwing like paper on fire, right? And another great benefit to the ketogenic diet is it has been clinically proven for epilepsy and certain neurological disorders. So if you are one of those individuals, definitely discuss this with your physician. Downsides, and this is where I'm not as big a fan in this, I don't think there's any inherent issue with the diet, but for me, I think how can I do this for like the rest of my life, right? Like how can this work? So of course, once again, with the intermittent fasting, maybe that won't work for the rest of your life. I mean, skipping breakfast, that could probably be fine, but you can't not eat forever, right? Obviously you have to eventually eat. So with the ketogenic diet, it can be quite challenging to stay on it, long-term, especially if you're traveling or going other places. It's hard to always find the stuff that you want and need readily available, especially easily available when it comes to traveling. So that can be a challenge. Also, if you do kind of backslide, you can get this like keto flu. So it kind of makes you feel terrible. So once again, that's where I'm not as big of a fan of it. And then when you add in the other possible nutrient gaps that you may have if you haven't really like planned this out, it's kind of like my same view of like the vegan diet, right? It's like, it's not that it's inherently bad. It's just that it's easy to be vegan or be ketogenic and have gaps in your nutrition, right? Have things that aren't quite working. So I think this would be a great one to discuss with your physician, see if this can help you like achieve a certain goal or help you with, certain weight loss. But is this something you're going to be doing now, for the next, 10 years or, years of your life? Probably not. So that's why I'm as not of a fan of this one. Next we have nootropics and smart drugs. And, I'm not talking about anything crazy here, right? I'm talking about caffeine, L-theanine, modafinil, mushroom blends. And with the mushrooms, we're like talking about the cordyceps, lion's mane, things like that. I think even turkey tail would fall into this category. These definitely work. I mean, they are effective. Is it something that you would want to consistently use, every single day, especially something like a modafinil, which is a prescription drug? Absolutely not, because everything has a compromise, right? If you take a lot of caffeine, you can potentially get, more jittery. Maybe you take too much caffeine, you get headaches, hard time sleeping. So maybe even issues with blood pressure. So everything has a give and take. You just want to figure out what is going to work for you and then how you can balance it out. But once again, you have a big presentation coming up, you have an event that you want to perform well at. Yeah, use these nootropics to give yourself a bit of an advantage at that event, perform well. But then it comes back to your, day-to-day life. Are you want to be taking, modafinil or some other things that are going to give you a much more greater stimulation? Probably not, right? So I think this is where we can balance out by going, all right, caffeine. I mean, most people are on caffeine, right? I say on caffeine like it's some street drug, but yes, most people are on the drug caffeine. They get it from coffee or energy drinks, whatever it is. That one is phenomenal. Obviously, I think everyone probably knows that, and I don't think there's a lot of downsides to it. Whether you're having pure caffeine, or I'd even say ideally having it from whole bean coffee, or rather just coffee beans in general, and a good source, good organic coffee that you're grinding at your house, making like a French press coffee or whatnot. I think that's spectacular. The issue that we have when people start going with caffeine and coffee is they're grabbing this crazy essentially a milkshake to say that they're getting coffee. That's where the problem comes in, right? So you're taking something that could be a 0-calorie stimulating good kind of nootropic thing, and instead you're essentially throwing in like all this poison to it. You're throwing in, tons of dairy, tons of sugar, tons of whatever artificial flavorings come in, those, Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks, Frappuccino things. That's where I'd, stay away from that stuff. Get to the source as best you can. So some of the downsides aside from that is, stimulants can cause tolerance and sleep issues and some dependency, right? Because if you've ever been taking caffeine regularly and then you stop taking caffeine, you stop drinking that coffee, you'll start feeling, withdrawal symptoms coming on, the headaches, the great fatigue. So it's just, once again, it's one of those balances. Yeah, there's absolutely strong evidence that, these things do work. And yeah, I mean, 2 thumbs up, they're effective. They absolutely work. But is it something you want to do every single day? Probably not. So that's the balance. Next up is the wearable tech and tracking. We've made a couple videos about these, and whether it's the Oura ring, the Whoop, or continuous glucose monitor, or an Apple Watch. I mean, there's so many things. I mean, the 8 Sleep, there's more than I even know the name of, right? There's a lot of different wearable tech and tracking. I recommend all of these things. I think they're great. And I wouldn't say that one is necessarily like that much better or remarkable than the other. All of them have shortcomings in their absolute accuracy, but then they always, have their positives, which is, well, now you can put a metric towards something you did not have a metric. And you can now be passively tracking something instead of having to commit a lot of time to journaling and writing things out, right? Like, I don't need to, journal down, when did I go to bed, when did I wake up, did I toss and turn, and as I'm trying to fall asleep, I'm grabbing a, journal and writing out, I'm tossing and turning, right? It's silly, but now with various trackables, I can track all the information. If you, get a continuous glucose monitor because you want to see, how your kind of standard diet is affecting your mood and like how you're feeling and your energy levels and focus, you can get one of those, wear them for things like usually like a week or two, and get an idea of like, kind of what works the best for you. And that's a great time if you do get one of those to kind of trial some, different things. Like, all right, when I go and have, Thai food and, it tastes like it's sweet, is it really sweet? Is it like sending my blood sugar through the moon? You may be surprised to find out that, yeah, that pad Thai's got a lot of sugar in it, right? So those are where these things are like super beneficial. The biggest thing is just the ability to have a metric, right? Once again, as we mentioned in other videos, don't worry if that metric is precisely correct. The biggest thing is what is the trend of that metric, because it'll be consistent to itself, right? It may underplay your caloric expenditure. It may not precisely monitor your sleep, but it still just gives you a metric that as you start making changes in your health and your life, you can start seeing, is it improving or not, right? So that'll be great. The biggest downside I'd say to these, aside from the obvious of, the accuracy is, I guess it'd be two things. One is some of these require a subscription. So, depending, where you're at financially, that can start, stacking up. Others is, just simply buying the device. That's an expenditure, right? An Apple Watch costs, X amount of dollars. So you have to pay that. And then if you want to have access to certain services or ways of tracking, then that may be another fee that you're now paying monthly. And then other than that, the other issue can sometimes become data obsession, right? So you're like always looking at this thing, it's, starting to, warp your mind around, how you just live your life. For me, what I love is the passive nature of it, right? I don't have to be obsessed about it. It's measuring these things. I can then look on a weekly basis or, monthly basis and see, how am I doing? Or, after waking up and I feel, kind of like groggy or off, I can then look at my, sleep score, what was going on? Like, was I moving around a lot? Usually I'm already quite aware of it, but then I can start doing things to improve it. So if I'm seeing consistently, I'm having issues in my sleep, like, all right, maybe I should, go back to trying this tea, or maybe I should try this different thing, or, maybe that nootropic I tried is, stimulating me too much. So let me adjust that, right? So it's just a nice way to passively stay on top of stuff instead of being obsessive about like every, hour, like, oh, what is my step count out? What's this and that? I think that's where you can sometimes get into an issue. And what's the science behind these things? I mean, they're very well documented and proven as far as being able to track things and know what's happening. So they definitely work. And yeah, I'd say I give it 2 thumbs up, right? It's a great way to have a metric, right? If you don't know what the scoreboard is in the game, you don't know who's winning, right? And you don't know what's making the difference. So if you look at, sports, all the stats they have for all the players, they know definitively, how well this person's potentially going to do, right? Same thing when you have a tracker. You can start understanding, hey, am I moving around as much as I thought? Like, I remember when I first got a Fitbit, I thought I walked an insane amount, right? And then so many people I talk to, right? They're like, oh my God, I'm walking around all the time. I'm always getting up from my chair. I'm trotting around the office. I probably walk 10 miles. Well, as we started getting Fitbits, myself and some friends, we started realizing, wow, like we don't really walk around nearly as much as we thought. And then that changed my habit, right? So it wasn't something I needed to obsess all the time. It's just after a single day, I was like, wow, I only took like 2,000 steps. Like, that's crazy. The recommendation is, 10,000. I think maybe now they say 20,000, whatever it is. But once you have that metric, then you go, okay, let me start making lifestyle changes. Let me start making sure that when I park further away in the parking lot. Let me make sure that after I have a meal, I take a moment and you walk around a bit more. Let me make sure that when I end my day, I'm going, for like a big walk around the neighborhood. All of these things, you start making real changes, and that's where, the wearables has the most benefit. So next up is we have red light therapy and infrared devices. These, I don't know fully where I sit on it. So it kind of depends. I haven't used these as much. I've definitely been in an infrared sauna, and it's hot. Like, I feel the heat coming, radiating off of the thing. So it definitely is effective. vast majority of research that's been done on kind of the heat exposure is usually around dry heat. So it's like a sauna where it's just, radiating hot heat coming out versus, infrared heat. But, there's a lot of benefits. It can support skin health, collagen, wound healing. I'm sure you've probably seen the, Instagram people wearing that red light mask and, doing whatever they do. So it should help with that. It can help regulate your circadian rhythm, especially as you wake up or you're ready to go to bed. You have the different, lights kind of triggering your body to let you know, hey, you're waking up versus, hey, it's time to relax and go to sleep. And there's a potential role in muscle recovery. Some of the downsides, and I'd say this is probably the main downside that's kept me away from some of these things, is it can become extremely expensive equipment. So if you wanted to own your own, red light therapy bed, like some Mac Daddy machine, that could be over $100,000, right? If you want these lights that stand up, there's a certain amount to that. And without me knowing enough of how effective it is at producing specific outcomes, that's where I have a harder time fully recommending it. But is it something that's, going to be, bad for you or hurt you? I don't really believe so. The biggest downside is really just that expensiveness of it, right? And then, how effective it is, that's something you have to kind of figure out for yourself and, how it works for you. So this isn't one I'd, fully recommend, but I also don't see a problem with it. Like, I don't see it being something that's going to, I guess what I look at is there a potential upside? Yes, no. And then is there a definitive downside? Like, could this actually hurt me? As long as that answer is no, then I don't really think there's much of an issue in giving it a shot. This is a big one that I hear a lot. So this next biohacking thing, I feel like I wouldn't even classify this as biohacking. I just classify this as living a healthy life. And that's supplements, right? I know some people right now are like, oh my God, supplements, you just eat a healthy diet. Yeah, I mean, that was probably good advice, way back in the day when, the topsoil of the earth was way more nutritious and we had better farming practices and, a lot more nutrition in the food. But if you do research about food nutrition and how nutritious it is and how it's been going down, and if you want to do more research and potentially lose sleep and learn about the topsoil of the earth and how we're losing nutrients, it gets crazy, right? Point being, there are a lot of remarkable supplements out there, and it's a great way to bridge the gap where your diet may be falling short, or even if you are on a perfect diet, it's an easy way to make sure you're getting everything that you need, right? So maybe you're on a perfect diet, but maybe you're now traveling or you're going to be somewhere that you're not used to, or you don't have your normal kitchen. Supplements are a great way to make sure that you're hitting your goals. And if you have a specific health thing that you're trying to improve upon, I would say first start looking into the well-researched supplements that could help you with that issue. So for example, in a lot of my life, I've had higher blood pressure. As went to doctors, they're like, it's not anything hardcore. We're probably not going to give you a drug. We first, recommend lifestyle changes. Of course, a lot of those changes I was already doing. So I started looking into more of what could help. Magnesium, some other supplements this garlic supplement that can help. As I started taking those things and some more potassium, I was able to start improving my blood pressure. So that was an easy solution, with the downside being, really just the cost of the supplements, which none of these supplements are some crazy thing. And then the huge improvement to me is I didn't have to continue this path of maybe always having elevated blood pressure and having health issues later down the line, or having to then get on a blood pressure medication, which has other potential side effects to it. So supplements definitely work. A lot of them are good for majority of people. I would say vitamin D is something a lot of individuals should look into. I mean, here I am in the office, right? Having this, conversation with you. I'm sure that you're probably not outside. We spend a lot of our time inside, right? And even when we are outside, we're probably wearing something like this, right? We're not getting all of the sun exposure that we should be getting. So vitamin D is an easy way to make sure you're getting that essential, vitamin for you, which your skin can produce. I guess really it's not even a vitamin, it's more like a hormone. But anyways, it's a whole other topic. So downsides of supplements, the biggest thing is it's expensive and it's unregulated. So expensive meaning it's just another expense. And depending on what supplement you're getting, it can get, really expensive. If you're getting something that's going to help you with, NMN or some NAD kind of precursor, help, build that up, or, some more kind of fancy nootropic type supplement thing, it can get more expensive. But if you're having something as basic as creatine, that's a lot less expensive. If you're having something like vitamin D, very inexpensive, especially per capsule that you'd be taking in, one capsule a day, basically. So, so the unregulated part, that's where that could be a bigger issue, especially if you're going on Amazon and grabbing some random supplement. There is not as much regulation ensuring purity, so you want to be looking for more reputable supplement companies and brands, and ones that ideally have third parties testing them and validating that what they say is in there is definitely in there. Yeah, there's strong science to a lot of supplements. You can go to a website called, exam.com. They have phenomenal research around supplements and the proven outcome in clinical studies, or various studies to show like how effective it is. That's actually how I started figuring out what supplements I should take to improve my blood pressure. So highly recommend that website. But yeah, there is a lot of research and evidence out there for what a supplement is able to do, from whatever claim someone makes to what has actually been studied. So if you look into things like vitamin D and creatine and vitamin C and things like that, like these, the main kind of like supplements you kind of always hear about, you'll see a lot of remarkably strong evidence showing you that, yeah, this will definitely make an improvement depending on what supplement we're talking about and what the outcome would be. So supplements I recommend, absolutely 2 thumbs up, like 100%. That's a great thing to have. Even if you're concerned about you're taking too much of the supplement, you'll just pee it out. I mean, that's usually the side effect, right? If you overdose on most supplements, the side effect is really nothing. I mean, pee, maybe you get diarrhea, like, maybe you feel nauseous, but this is not like a medication where if you accidentally took, whatever, a few more vitamin C, then you're going to like have some serious issue. That's not going to be the case. So next is stem cells, peptides, and regenerative medicine. There is a lot of buzz around peptides and stem cells and regenerative medicine, right? So, I'd say with this one, since we're mixing such a big group of biohacking kind of things together, and once again, using the same kind of logic from supplements, it really depends on where you're getting it, what you're looking for it to achieve, and who is implementing and doing it, right? I would not go to any random person to have them, give me stem cells in hopes that, it work, right? I would want to find who's the world-renowned person who can definitively help me with this, and then go to that person, right? So there are a lot of different clinics around at the moment. In my limited understanding with stem cells, majority of the best clinics are usually outside of the US because there's different laws that allow them to better utilize stem cells. I'm sure things like that will change in the US. They've already been a lot of different changes since stem cells have been a hotter thing. But do stem cells work? Absolutely. It seems to be that the quality, I guess it'd be the type, the source, the quality, all these, and then the injection ability, like where they're actually putting it versus an IV. Meaning, if you have a shoulder issue, if you had some rub-on stem cell thing, it might not really do all that you need. If you even do just an intravenous stem cell, that would probably help, but it may not be as effective as if you have someone doing proper imaging, seeing precisely where the issue is, injecting straight into that area with the proper amount and type of stem cells to definitively help you there. That's going to be the best. So stem cells, 100% work, just depends on, I guess it really be the artist, right? The person who's going to be doing the service to make sure they're doing the best. Peptides, absolutely, that works. There's a lot of conversations around BBC 157, also the GLP-1s like the semaglutide, tirzepatide. Those are prescription medications, but they are also under the umbrella of peptides. So they definitely work. The question always becomes the side effects of some of them. Like, for example, there's a lot of headlines now with semaglutide making people be blind. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's just to show that this isn't something like a supplement where if you take too much vitamin B, then you just pee out a yellow color, right? So definitely you want to be talking with a proper healthcare professional to get you the right stem cells and peptides. And then with regenerative medicine, that one, it kind of depends on what the service is. So my recommendation, that much broader kind of term of biohacking, is look for studies with a large sample size, meaning it wasn't 2 people that did this that had a great outcome, but instead they started with 100 people, 50 people. Ideally the bigger the number the better, but also realize it costs money, right? Like if I'm going to do a study with 100,000 people and I'm going to be providing my service, I have to pay for that, right? So it gets expensive. So anything that has just a good number of people, anything that's like 50 or more, gives great insights into what it could actually do. And just, look through of like, how is this study structured? How many did they originally start with? How many, finished it? How many got the outcome? That's all going to matter. Because if it's like, whatever, 10,000 people started and 5 people had a great outcome, that's not good, right? Those are not the numbers you're looking for. You're looking for, whatever, 50 people started, 50 people completed, and 50 people felt better, right? That's ideal. So with those, it just depends. Some of them can be very cutting edge and may not be super effective, but once again, there's so many new things coming out. In my mind, I always balance it. What is the thing I'm trying to solve? Is this way I'm looking to solve it the best way, or good way, or just newer way? And then the last thing that's always the primary decision factor is, what's the downside, right? Could this thing hurt me? And if there's serious things that could do to hurt you, like for example, the headlines we're seeing about semaglutide, that becomes concerning, right? You want to lose weight, semaglutide is a possible solution, but if it is true that it could make you lose your vision, that's not good, right? So that's where you want to kind of look at and balance it out. But yeah, I mean, of the things that we've mentioned, the cold exposure, heat exposure, intermittent fasting, sleep, exercise, creatine, trackers, find, just one of these things, incorporate into your life, right? It could be the simplest thing. I'd probably say the easiest out of all of these that we've mentioned that you could take action on, tomorrow, is probably just at the end of your shower, turn it really cold. Stay in there for, a couple minutes of the water going over your whole body, right? After that, you could try intermittent fasting, especially after talking with your physician to see if it would make any sense. Just try that out, right? Do a couple days of intermittent fasting. How'd that feel? Going to bed at whatever time and then not eating until 1 or 2 o'clock the next day. How'd it feel? Did you feel better? Did you feel worse? Was it making any improvements in your health? Right? Just try those things out before you want to start diving into spending $20,000 on stem cells or buying a $100,000 red light bed, right? I like to just start simple, start stacking up habits and seeing how it makes improvement in my health. Well, thank you so much for being here on today's podcast. If you've watched this far and you have not subscribed, please, it takes 3 seconds, hit the subscribe button, like. Also, now that you've been to the end of the video, what are your comments, right? Is there something you'd like us to talk more about? Do you have a specific type of biohacking or treatment or thing that you've done that you think is phenomenal? Let us know in the comments, and yeah, share the video to other people. Thank you so much. My name is Boone. Talk to you later.